Previously we have looked at circulatory system, and we want to go further and look at another system related to circulatory system called lymphatic system. Circulatory system does not work independently. It works together with the lymphatic system. Remember, when we talked about the roles of circulatory system, we found out that the major role of circulatory system is to distribute materials in the body. For example, dissolved food materials, hormones, and several other materials like minerals, salts or ions, and water. But for proper distribution to take place, we have lymphatic system. So I want to find out what makes up lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is made up of the following. One is lymphy fluid. Lymphy fluid. Then also it has lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels. It also has accessory parts like lymph nodes. Lymph nodes together with lymph glands. Lymph glands. So I want to look at each one of them and find out their roles and how, or the structure of the same. Lymph fluid. So what is this lymph fluid? Lymph fluid is colorless liquid that is formed due to ultrafiltration of blood plasma. Now, what is this ultrafiltration? Now, for us to understand it better, we can use this diagram to get it better. If this is an artery, it branches into small arteries. Those small arteries are usually referred to as arterioles. These arterioles usually further branch into very fine blood vessels called capillaries. These capillaries will later join again into slightly smaller tubes called venules. And then venules join into large vessel called the veins. Now, for us to understand how lymph fluid is formed, we shall go through this. When blood is flowing through the arteries, it is at a high pressure. At this point, there is high pressure. We know the reason why blood in arteries flows at a high pressure. It is because blood is being pumped directly from the heart through the aorta. Aorta is an example of an artery. So in this artery, blood will be at a high pressure. We also have other factors like thick muscles of the artery that will also increase pressure. But the main reason is that blood being pumped from the heart, specifically from the left ventricle, is at a high pressure. So here there is high pressure. But again, this pressure increases further when the lumen This one is slightly large, lumen. Diameter is large, but the diameter here reduces further. So when this blood reaches at this point, the pressure increases further. And pressure increases further again in the blood capillaries because their lumen is even smaller than that one of arteries. So due to high pressure in the arterioles, blood reaching here will undergo a process called filtration. In this filtration, small materials of small molecular weight will pass from the capillaries. It will get out of these capillaries. Forming part of the fluid that we are talking about, the lymph fluid. So some of the materials that we expect here include water. Will be here. Nutrients. We have talked about nutrients like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, and glycerol, mineral salts, vitamins will be part of the materials that will be filtered into this space. So that fluid that will be flowing into this space or in between the cells, these are cells, and then in between we have that fluid that has come about due to ultrafiltration. We call it lymph fluid. This fluid, as we have said, contains these substances together with others like antibodies. But there is one major thing that we should know, that lymph fluid, we already know that it is coming from blood, emanates from blood plasma, but it will be lacking blood cells. It lacks blood cells. So lymph fluid lacks blood cells. The reason why it is lacking blood cells is because blood cells are usually large in size. So because they are large in size, they cannot pass through the small pores of the capillaries. So you realize that lymph fluid will be colorless because it lacks blood cells such as red blood cells. So lymph fluid, we have said, it contains red blood cells, lacks red blood cells. Therefore, because of that, it is colorless. But there is an exception. We have said it also contains some cells. Although they are large in size, these are white blood cells. How come white blood cells could be found in the tissue fluid, in the lymph fluid, and yet they are even larger than red blood cells? It is because they perform amoeboid movement. So what is this amoeboid movement? Amoeboid movement involves movement of part of the cell membrane forming what you call a pseudopodia. Pseudopodia is this. If this is the white blood cell, it can extend its membrane, forming that portion. So that point is called the pseudopodia. So that pseudopodia, or an extension of the cell membrane, forms a room where the cytoplasm in the white blood cells will flow in that direction in a process called mass flow. And in the process, you realize that the outside part of the white blood cells will start increasing, while this part decreases in size. in the process, the wall of the white blood cell will be out of the blood capillary, forming part of the tissue fluid. Also, we have platelets. Platelets form part of the tissue fluid. But majorly, these are the materials: water, nutrients, mineral salts, vitamins, antibodies, and sometimes white blood cells and platelets forming the tissue fluid. So in essence, tissue fluid is just similar to plasma, blood plasma, but it is only that it lacks majorly the red blood cells. So because of that, we have emphasized the tissue fluid will be colorless. That is. Another component of lymphatic system is lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels. Now, lymphatic vessels are slightly different from those of blood circulatory system, because for lymphatic vessels, they have a closed end. It just begins from somewhere. For example, we are going to look at the chart and identify how it is. If this is the lymph capillaries, they'll just start from a point like this. I'll increase, and then they join into a lymphatic duct. Then that lymphatic duct then joins a vein, which now will drain the lymph tissue, the lymph fluid into the heart through the neck region. So it is a closed end. This is a closed end. These are capillaries. We call them lymph capillaries, which will join into lymph duct, if there are many ducts, and then it later joins into vein that drains the fluid into the neck region and then into the heart. So in essence, lymphatic system consists of lymphatic vessels, which are mainly consisting of lymph capillaries that join together into lymph ducts or duct, and then later into vein, and drains this lymph fluid, if this was the fluid, into the heart. We are going to look at it from our chart. So lymphatic system, we have emphasized it consists of lymph fluid, lymph vessels. So one of the major vessels is just a sketch here. We have this side called the right lymph duct, and then here we have the left lymph duct. We have other parts of the lymphatic system. The third one, we have glands and then nodes. We have three types of nodes. In the neck region, we have what you call cervical. So we have already said that lymphatic system consists of some components. Lymph fluid is one of them. Lymphatic vessels, we have some on our chart here, and then some other glands and organs. So we have, on this side, we have the left lymph duct. On this side, we have the right lymph duct. And then we have lymph nodes. We have 3 types. Cervical lymph nodes, as from the diagram, it is found in the neck region. The neck region, that is. You'll edit that one. Cervical lymph nodes are found in the neck region. And then we have auxiliary lymph nodes found in the armpits. And then pelvic lymph nodes found in the pelvic region. So you can be able to detect lymph nodes on your body when there's an infection, for example, bacterial infection. If it is close to the throat or in the neck region, the lymph nodes are going to swell. If it is on the arm, the auxiliary lymph nodes are going to swell. You realize that when you press inside the armpits, you will realize that we have some lumps. Those are auxiliary nodes, and they're just working. We are going to look at the function. And then pelvic lymph nodes in this region. If, for example, you have a wound on your leg and then it's not well taken care of, it develops some septicemia kind of a situation or condition. It gets infected and the lymph nodes are going to swell due to filtering of the bacteria. So in this region, you will also feel some lumps. And then we also have other organs like spleen. Spleen is also part of the lymphatic system. We have another gland called thymus gland. Thymus gland, and we have mammary glands. Mammary glands. So lymphatic system will consist of 3 parts, as we have mentioned: the lymph fluid, the lymph vessels. We have the left lymph duct, the right lymph duct, and glands. We have the thymus glands, the mammary glands, and an organ, the spleen. We shall look at each of these, the role of each of those parts. One of them we have identified, the left lymphatic or lymph duct. The left lymph duct. The left lymph duct usually collects lymph from the left side of the body and drains it into the heart. Then right lymph duct. Just like the left, it also collects lymph fluid from the right side of the body into the heart. We have mentioned other glands like thymus gland. Thymus gland usually changes. It changes lymphocytes. Lymphocytes produced in the bone marrows into T cells. We have the spleen. Spleen has several roles. Is the one that initiates immune response. especially in fetus and babies, and also destroys worn out red blood cells. Now, when red blood cells are destroyed, it releases hemoglobin. So this hemoglobin is still important. Since it is important, the spleen will come in and store the hemoglobin for formation of more red blood cells. We have the lymph nodes. We have mentioned types of them. Lymph nodes. We have mentioned the cervical in the neck region, auxiliary in the armpits, and then the pelvic region. So the major role of lymph nodes is filtering. Filters the fluids. It filters the fluid. For example, if the fluid is containing or is having bacteria, it will filter the fluid. In other words, if, for example, this is the lymph nodes and we have lymph fluids flowing through it and it has bacteria, what will happen? Those bacteria will be trapped. Will be trapped in the node here, and then we are going to have the lymphocyte destroying it. That's why you realize that the nodes in the neck, in the armpits, and in the pelvic region, they will swell during an infection because of trapped bacterial or trapped pathogens. So these are the major parts of the lymphatic system. Now, what is the role, function of lymphatic system? We have already seen the role of lymphatic system through the parts. One of them we have said, because it has the lymph nodes, is going to trap or filter pathogens and in the process destroy the pathogens. So filters pathogens in the fluid and in the process destroys the pathogens. Remember, we have structures like the lymphocytes that will come in handy to destroy the pathogens. Another role of lymphatic system is to drains excess tissue fluid back into the heart. Remember, we have said lymphatic system is a closed-end system. So sometime we are going to have tissue fluid getting out of the system, and then it is going to retain in the tissues. It has to go back to the heart. Otherwise, if this one does not happen, we are going to have swellings happening. We call that condition as edema. If, for example, you sit for a long time, maybe you're traveling without moving your limbs, you realize that the lower parts of the limbs usually swell due to accumulation of excess tissue fluid. So lymphatic systems comes in handy to drain this back to the heart so that circulation can continue. And then we have also seen that it's involved in production of immune cells. Immune cells. For instance, we have the lymphocytes. The spleen is involved. We have the monocytes. These are involved in destruction of the pathogens. And then when we looked at digestive system, we said that we have some food materials that cannot be directly absorbed into the blood circulatory system, but it has to find a system in which it will be transported. One of them was the fatty acids. Fatty acids and glycerol. The nature of fatty acids and glycerol is that they are insoluble. So they have to find a system in which they'll be transported or they'll be absorbed into the bloodstream. So one of them is through the lymphatic system. You realize that in the villi or villas of the small intestines, we have a vessel called the lacteal. Lacteal is connected to lymphatic system. Lymphatic system. So other materials will be absorbed directly into the blood capillaries in the villi, but fatty acids and glycerol that are arising from breakdown of lipids will be absorbed maybe by diffusion or active transport into the lacteal and then joins into the lymphatic system, and it will be transported to the rest of the body parts. So lymphatic system as a function involved in transport is involved in transport of fatty acids and glycerol. So I want us to look at the following question as we complete this topic. So one of the question is, what is lymphy fluid? What is a lymphy fluid, or what is lymphy? We have already said lymphy fluid is colorless. It's a colorless. It's a colorless fluid formed from ultrafiltration. Ultrafiltration in the capillaries. And we described some of the characteristics of lymphy fluid. We said that it lacks red blood cells, and then very important, it has less proteins. Why? Because these two are very large in size, therefore they cannot be filtered through the capillaries to form tissue fluid. Another question is this: how is lymphy different from blood? One of the answers can easily come from this. Blood usually contains red blood cells, but lymphy will lack the red blood cells. Lymphy has no red blood cells. If we use a table, lymphy on this side and blood here, but this for blood has red blood cells. Then in terms of proteins, lymphy has less proteins. This one has more proteins. When we say less proteins, this one for lymphy will lack. It lacks blood plasma proteins. Plasma proteins. For instance, we have already come across plasma proteins. We have globulins, we have albumin, fibrinogen. When you say less, it means we could be having some, but here it has more. For blood, it has more proteins. And then in terms of where it flows, we have already found that lymphy flows in lymphatic vessels. It flows through lymphatic vessels. This one, or blood, will flow through blood vessels. We came across several of them: arteries, veins, and capillaries. Another question: state 3 functions of lymphatic system. It has come out very clearly. Transportation of fatty acids and glycerol. Production of immune cells. Production of immune cells. Filtration of pathogens in the lymph fluid. There were several. At your own time, you can also add. Another question, name 3 systems. 3 systems that work together with lymphatic system. So here we shall be a little bit keen. In the beginning, in the introduction, we say lymphatic system works together with another system called circulatory system. So one of the system is circulatory system. It works together with circulatory system. Indeed, we have seen that. Where does lymph come from? It comes from ultrafiltration of blood that is passing through the capillaries. So already there's a connection with circulatory system. Where does this lymph drain to? It drains to the heart, which later again continues the circulation of the fluid. So it will work together with circulatory system. Another system is digestive system. Digestive system or digestion. Digestive system. We have seen that. For example, transportation of fatty acids and glycerol. For this one to happen, first of all, we shall have digestion taking place in the digestive system. Remember, we have lipids will be digested. They form fatty acids and glycerol. And then we shall have absorption through the lactyle in the villi or villus. And then it will get into the lymphatic system. So there is a connection. Another one is immune system. Immune system. We have seen that lymphatic system has lymph nodes. The role of lymph nodes majorly is to trap pathogens. Trapping is not enough of the pathogen, but it has to be destroyed. The immune system will come in through the use of antibodies, which will now destroy the trapped pathogen. So there is a link between lymphatic system and immune system. Question number 5. Explain why the lymphatic system is a one-way system. Explain why lymphatic system is one way. One way. Now, if you remember properly, we were able to describe that this is a one-ended system, such that it begins from the blood capillaries. If that is the blood capillary, it is closed end. That blood capillary is closed end. Blood capillary is closed end. And then these blood capillaries, they join together to form. They join together to form lymph ducts. These are blood capillaries or lymph capillaries, that is. Lymph capillaries. Capillaries. They join together forming the lymph ducts or ducts. Then those ducts will again now join together and then into slightly large vessel a vein. And then this vein will drain into the main vein in the neck region. In the neck region, and then to the heart. To the heart. So this end here is closed. That's why we are saying it is a one-way. So lymph will be flowing this direction. After bathing the cells, supplying it with materials, nutrients, and other things, this fluid will drain into these lymphic capillaries, join into the lymph ducts, into the vein, into the heart. Why is it going back to the heart? So that now the heart again can pump or can facilitate the movement of the lymph to other region. That's why it is one way. It is going one direction. It does not come back again. Unlike for blood system. Number 6. I'll just read. If you hurt, I'll use this book where the question is, if you hurt your wrist and you do not move your arm for a while, your wrist swells and the area becomes large and swollen. So the question is, why does it become swollen? Why does it become swollen? You have hurt your wrist, maybe an injury, a fracture, but it swells. Why does it swell? And what is the recommended treatment? So the wrist will become swollen when you hurt yourself due to accumulation of lymph fluid. So the reason why it is swelling is due to accumulation of lymph fluid. That is common. If, for example, you are playing or you are walking and then you fall, you experience a fracture, something like that, it is going to interfere with the vessels in the lymphatic system. So it will cause accumulation of the lymph fluid. But now, how can you deal with this? How can you treat this swollen wrist? What you can easily do is raise your arm above your heart or your head, so that now the gravity will pull the lymph fluid to the heart, and then the heart now will take over the role of pumping the lymph fluid to the rest of the body. The last question is, name one disease. Name one disease associated with the lymphatic system. Disease associated with lymphatic system. One common disease, especially in developing world, is elephantiasis. Elephantiasis. It comes from, you can see the word is coming from an animal called elephant. In this condition, what happens, the lower limbs usually swell and then they reach, or they can be approximately the size of that one of an elephant. That's why it's called elephantiasis. How does it come about? It comes about due to infection by a worm called filarial worm. This worm usually blocks these ducts. After infection is going to block the ducts. When it blocks the ducts, instead of this lymph fluid going back to the heart, is going to accumulate in the lower limbs. When it accumulates in the lower limbs, the limbs are going to swell. That swelling is what we were describing as oedema. So in the process, the lower limbs are going to swell, and if treatment is not done in advance, the filarial worm infests nearly all of the lymphatic system. And remember, lymphatic system, they are very fine lymph capillaries. They are all over the body. So in the process, it will become very difficult to treat. Even if they are killed, the filarial worm are going to block these lymph capillaries completely, or lymph ducts completely, and the liquid will continually accumulate in the ducts. So I hope you have enjoyed the lesson. If you have questions, you always know how to reach us. Thank you.